Good afternoon. I'm celebrating still. My refurbished Mac is back. Uh, and let's see how we do. The first teaching that I did a couple of days ago, near the end, the mic started crackling. So I switched the battery, and let's see if this is a go. I'm always I pay attention to the world around me. I always pay attention, and for a myriad of reasons. Well, number one, I have a natural curiosity. I like to experience what's going on to me. I like to see, to live. I guess is what I'm trying to say. I like to live. And I'm very content to live in the world that I find myself at the present time. Maybe I won't be so happy if my world changes, but I would think that I would be, because my happiness doesn't spring from anything outside of me. It springs from within. And the beauty, the sacredness of this kind of love that comes from the inside is that nobody, not only are you not dependent on anyone else to keep this love going, no one can take it away from you except yourself. And I've always said that happiness is a choice. I choose to be happy. I have to work on playful. I've never really chosen to be playful. I lean towards the more serious type, for better or worse. But just reading about boredom, and I'm reading about boredom for cats of all things. And my little kitty, Little Orange, is bored. And when my wife is here in Hualien, sometimes she's in Taipei, half the time probably in Taipei, half the time with us here in Hualien, 2 hours to the south along the beautiful east coast of Taiwan Island, for those of you that don't know. But my wife is younger and more playful by nature. And the kitty is not so bored. So it's interesting that I'm looking at boredom, because I'm never bored, not that I'm aware of. Life keeps me busy. And busy not in the sense of a busy, busy, busy life, just busy being, busy living, busy learning, busy loving, busy listening. You get it. So as the time for each lesson, video sharing, I keep coming back to where this is not a lesson. This is simply a sharing. Lesson puts too much of an onus on me. I've got nothing to teach you that you don't already intrinsically know. What I can be helpful in is helping you to begin the process of remembering the forgotten. Learning about the artificial barrier that we place between ourselves and the infinite. Learning that is through acceptance of unity, acceptance of non-division, non-duality, that our true selves can be found. But I have been documenting what I was talking about, the moment, talking about future and the past. And how that there isn't anything other than the now. And I was playing with the idea of how long is now? Right now. How long is that? Can it be stretched? Can it be shortened? How much wiggle room do we have with this fact of life that the moment, this moment is all that we have? But it doesn't keep us from reflecting. So as I'm busy appreciating my increasing ability to live in the moment, my mind wanders. And that's what today, ghosts of time past. Recently I talked about lucid dreaming, and I really didn't know that there was any other kind of dreaming that I did know. I always had two types of dreams. One dream that I'm off in the light body in the esoteric, doing soul work, doing light body work, doing astral work in realms that I can't bring the physical body with. And it happens in two different states. It'll happen more consciously in my meditations, and it's a big part of sleeping. But the other half of dreaming is a dream where a lucid dream means that you're an active participant in your dream, not just a witness. So the two dreams, witnessing and participating. Some people just have dreams that just seem to happen to them, but my dreams always, if I chose, I could be an actor in my dreams. I could make decisions. I could make judgments, evaluations. I could guide. I could choose. I could be simply participate in my dreams. Well, lucid dreaming, some call it. So it leads me to believe that there's a third kind, that probably most people, and this is the realms of their dreams, where something just occurs to you, something, and it's interesting how it makes sense, perfect sense in a dream, and then you wake up and remember, huh? When you wake up and remember. And I might urge you to make an effort to remember. You can remember your dreams if you make an effort. Some people say keep a diary and write dream notes. But the dreams, parts of my dreams, what I've kind of settled on, the parts of my dreams that remain with me, that I'm able to recall, are the ones that I might get some use out of. And I just let go of the rest. It all comes back to that same old maxim. I know what I know when I need to know it. What a freedom. And forgetfulness is something that's part of the aging process, and we've learned to fear it because everybody's so afraid of Alzheimer's. And the part of Alzheimer's that is a little bit difficult for me to swallow is living in the past, forgetting the present, so actively remembering the most minuscule events from childhood, from earliest memories. I don't know what it is about the brain. Too much mercury. I don't know. But I see, I just can look at you see my brother's face when I talk about memory, because I talk to him about purposeful forgetfulness, learning to forget. And it really rattles his cage, because I think he's having problems, more problems than I am, with the aging. And maybe he's a victim. Maybe I repeat stories, or maybe I don't remember something that he just told me recently. He's not known, very well known for his patience. And it's pretty amazing. It's kind of a revelation, because we haven't lived together until this last couple. We lived nearby, where we saw each other on a daily basis, or at least several times a week, for the 30 something, 33-year gap. So it's obvious that our material is the material that we have at hand and that we can remember is before the time that we were the time that we were separated, before that time. So a lot of that is old junk. But what I'm talking about today, where my mind went today, when I relaxed and let it wander, and to see if I had anything worth sharing, was I went back and I saw a topic that I had wanted to talk about, because I write them down as things appear to me, as things dawn on me. And I like topics because it just kind of, if you give something a name, to me, making something real, in the esoteric sense of reality, it needs a name. We start off life with a name. A business for me starts off with a name. A topic starts off with a name. A book I'm considering writing starts off with a name. Name it first. Critical. And I've been working on and off recently. I took kind of a long hiatus, getting to be close to 6 months of writing on my spiritual autobiography. The story of my life, but most importantly, the evolution, my journey towards Buddhahood, my journey to waking up. And I haven't thought much past that. Time will tell, won't it, where we go from here. But ghosts of time past, this is what is necessary for me to write about events. And it's a learning process. What I'm learning the most from is what I don't want to write about. And a lot of that has to do with my first marriage, my one and only son, who happens to be autistic, who I haven't seen in many years. But it's this point, these things that I couldn't write about. I just skipped. I had to. Right now, I haven't even gone back. I have to go back because that part of my life deserves more forthcoming on my part. It seems that I compartmentalize as I do, and I put that away. Noisy. That's about The armies on maneuvers in their big vehicles come down my street. Unfortunately, my street is kind of a shortcut. A lot of people who in the know use it. So pardon me for the big noise, but it was funny. It's funny how I got saved. I was compartmentalized, and I tend to bury it deep. And all these things about this period of time. It's only 5 or 6 years of my life, and I can only say only 5 or 6 years because I've lived at 72. If you're 20, 5 or 6 years is a good chunk. At 72, anyway, I glossed over this part, and I've yet to go back because I know that the ghosts of time past healing, this compartmentalizing, this sealing up in a tomb, this closing a part of who I am, even to myself, deserves to see the light of day. So there's still this part of me that I haven't healed. I haven't dealt with it. I haven't concluded it. I have, however, taken away the lessons there and utilized them. But there's more to it than that. So this ghosts of time past, ghosts. I remember being in the hospital with my open heart surgery, my aortic valve replacement, and it's pretty traumatic to have your chest. It's a pretty to live on, to your heart stops beating, your lungs stop working, to be artificially kept alive. And I understand I was on these, hooked up to these machines for more than 8 hours. And I look back at that time, how vulnerable, completely naked. Maybe they give me a sheet to cover for some self-modesty, but I don't even know. Maybe not, because I had catheters going everywhere that they could put one. And my friend, that she became my friend from my recovery time in the hospital, she's a surgical nurse. I said, how does it feel to see people lying there on the, either post-op or pre-op or during the op? What do you think? Just, oh, sorry, but they're just pieces of meat. And maybe she told me that maybe that's her coping mechanism. She didn't want to personalize it too much because it would just add to her personal trauma. So I was a piece of meat on the cutting board with the surgeon slash butcher, in the sense of keeping with my metaphor of being on the cutting board, a slab of meat, but at a very skilled surgeon, the head of the cardiology department at a major rehab hospital in Taipei. I was in good hands. My own cardiologist was an elementary school classmate, and he's the one with the cardiologist, this top cardiologist, the surgeon. My heart doctor is not a surgeon. He's a cardiologist specialist, not a surgeon. So his friend from elementary school, who seldom operated anymore because any of you that know, they're involved in any kind of a Any kind of work that includes running, the executive in charge. I'm losing a word here, but it'll come to me as I go on. But this is part of what I'm revisiting. This is part of the ghosts of time past. I remember, and I won't go into this too much, but remember, I'm talking about ghosts, talking about flashes, talking about experiences. I remember when I first became conscious, I was in a room that had been oxygenated. The room was heavily oxygenated, and they told me that in the ICU, special room, and my body was experiencing a little bit of a rough time. I had an organic. I didn't want mechanical valve. I had an organic valve, and my body was working on rejecting it. Was having a hard time accepting it. So they put me in this oxygenated room, and they warned me before I went under that there's going to be a tube down my throat. I said catheters everywhere, and said you're going to wake up but don't panic because you can breathe, but you'll feel like you can't breathe. Well, that's easy to say, but I remember waking up in a panic. And they got that the first thing to do when you show awareness, when you become conscious, is they take that tube out. They leave the other ones, but they take that one out. And I remember being able to relax. But what I remember, maybe some of you have some acid, some LSD experiences in your past. I certainly did at the age of 21 probably. I took acid several times in the course of a year, but not before or since. But so I had some reference point. But I remember that oxygenated room was like an acid. It was so colorful, sparkling colors, and that's the first memory. And maybe it would have been more startling. Maybe that's why I experimented with LSD when I did, to prepare me for 45 years later, when I'm having surgery, that I won't be too startled, that I was kind of aware that of a dimension, this colorful, it's beyond colorful. If you haven't experienced it, well, it's hard to really explain. Just psychedelic that word was psychedelic times. So one of the freedoms that this topic gives me is allows my mind to wander without any guilt. It might have consequences, who knows? But I don't have any guilt because I usually try to keep my mind focused. But sometimes you gotta let go, breathe out, breathe out, breathe out. So this topic today, Ghosts of Times Past, just allows me to go. I went back to probably the most uncomfortable, at least the part of my life that I haven't completed yet. I haven't dealt with. I haven't probably dealt with it very much because it was a time of pain. A time somehow I felt better left, that I was better off with not dealing with it. But maybe, I loved my first wife, but the problem was we didn't like each other much. And it took me years to figure that out. She didn't like me, I didn't like her. But we loved each other. And in a marriage, those serious marriage, loving each other, and it's good for lovers. But I would have been better off and she would have been better off if we went our separate ways when the love expired, the expiration date, when we stopped loving in the romantic, I'm talking about passion, sexual, okay? In the sexual love, which is innate, a very valid part of us. And without this sexual love, procreation would, imagine if procreation was as mundane as taking out the trash, as unpleasant as working with a job and working with people that you abhor. Waking up in the morning, going to work and saying, oh shit, I gotta go to work today. Living for the weekends, living for your time off because you were miserable the rest of the time. I learned early on. And maybe the marriage helped in my lessons about it doesn't make sense to spend any time at all in a situation that you can change, that's anything less than pleasant. You should love. You change work for survival, work for sustenance, to work with and for your heart. You love your work. And when you do have to do things that that you don't enjoy as much, or you can learn to love. This is where living in the moment, you can practice this and break it down. I was talking a little bit about counting and doing things in steps. And that's how I get my chores done. This, and this. And maybe in a day I have several chores, but I don't even think about, I do this chore and then I break it down and I count. And this is it's turned out to be a really good practice for appreciating, for fully grasping what being in the moment means. Fetch water, chop wood, or chop wood, fetch water. So when you're doing the chores, it becomes less of a chore and more of an opportunity to practice mindfulness. So I don't have many ghosts. I've dealt with the ghosts of times past. And I'm wondering, I have ghosts of time past, but I like ghosts of times past. Because I like that element of time, that there's different kinds of time. Time is not one-dimensional. Time is multi-dimensional, and proof of that is how we can experience time in different dimensions. The linear time, which we're so familiar with, and we've forgotten that this was a construct. The human mind, because we like to measure, we like to count. I talked to you about how I count. Measure, that's linear time, time past. So maybe if I better change this ghost of times past, because not only was it linear, sequential, and it's really interesting how that sequence can become jumbled. That how did something really happen? What were the exact steps? It's really hard to say. So sequential, measured, is one kind of time. arguably the least useful, at least personally, at least useful. I do look and see it's 12 minutes past the hour of 4 in the afternoon, which is easy. I can look and see light behind me and guess that I'm still in the daylight hours. But ghosts of time has passed. Let's change that. So anyway, deal with your ghosts. Best write a book. Write a book about your story. I mean, who could be more familiar with our story than ourselves? And I've been told, and that I had books in me, and I've chosen up till now these YouTubes, this talking to you has been more cathartic, more useful, more meaningful to me than putting words to paper. But I'm not bad at it. But it takes discipline. It takes discipline. So it's a good practice. So maybe to wrestle with your demons, if you have any. If you don't have any, what a fortunate being you are. But wrestle with your demons. Deal with them. Don't open up those compartments. Let the sun shine in. And I'm in the process. I still haven't actually sat down and begun this process. It's amazing how many, because it's painful. And I haven't wanted to open that can of worms and deal with the pain. And as long as I leave it undealt with, it's a festering sore. It needs me to at least open it up. Whether I can resolve it is another topic for another day. But I suggest to you that whatever means possible, put the ghosts to rest. Or at least make them like Casper, the friendly ghost, so that you might have these ghosts, these times, these travails in your past, but they're not harmful. And I remember, I didn't forget, I got halfway through my hospital story, but I'll go back into that at another time, or not. So I'm curious to see, I haven't heard any static. I'm curious to see, as I'm winding up to the end of the video, I'm curious to play this back, and if the simple change in the battery, it was intuitive. My lavalier mic, not only don't touch it, but check the battery. Intuitively, I knew. Let's see if it works.